welcome back to the book stamp. Today we're joined by Ray, who definitely wanted to be in the video, didn't you? And today we're going to be going through all the books that I read in January. Ready to go down? Thank you. Alright, so the first book that I read in January was All Systems Red by Martha Wells, which is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries series, which is going to be a theme for the next couple books. But these are basically a series of novellas that follow our main character, Murderbot, who is sort of a half-human, half-machine, called a security unit, who basically creates his, basically hacks his way to freedom from his, corporate owners, and then goes, we sort of follow his life as he works his normal job of providing security for this research team. Hijinks ensue, and I really loved in the series that Murderbot has a really unique sort of personality, and it's very dry and witty and sarcastic, and we also have an asexual character essentially, and so it's just really interesting from that point of view, as well as the people that Murderbot interacts with are essentially a futuristic version of human society where we have plural marriages and casual queerness, and the people that he interacts with are very pro bot sentience and bot human rights, and so that's really interesting take. And so I just found it a very interesting novella series. There's 4 of them. So there's the first one is All Systems Red. Then we have Rogue Protocol, Artificial Condition, and Exit Strategy, making up the first 4 novellas. I read them all via audio. They are excellent, excellent audiobooks. They're 3.5 hours each. I gave them all 4 stars, just because I didn't feel like they were a little too actiony for me, probably. And I wish they had been more. I'm a sucker for a good theme-heavy sci-fi. We know this about me. But I really, really enjoyed them, and they're excellent. I highly, highly recommend them. So those were the first 4 books that I read this year. Then I read Majesty by Katherine McGee. I have an entire I have an entire rant review about my feelings for this book because they were specific, and I felt like I needed to share them with the world. So if you like the American Royal series by Katherine McGee, or were dissatisfied with Majesty like I was, go check it out. I'll link it in the cards. But basically, I just really did not like the direction that the story took in Majesty, and I found it kind of really sexist and just a huge letdown for a really feel-good, my series for me. So I did not like it. I rated it 1 star. Okay, so my camera ran out of space when I was filming this last time, so I didn't get very far in at all, which was great. But we're gonna go ahead and continue on. Then I read Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which is absolutely one of my new favorite series with Gideon. So basically, Gideon the Ninth is pretty commonly described across BookTube as lesbian necromancers in space. Necromancy is the main thing of that's really poignant. Our main character Gideon and her best friend / crush / mortal enemy Harrow have to go represent the 9th house in a sort of quest to achieve immortal godhood, and mysteries ensue, relationships change. It is one of the most unique science fiction books that I have ever read. It is unlike anything else. It has elements of fan fiction and comedy and just grossness and power, and it is just so uniquely written. Our main character Gideon is a hoot and a half. I love her, and I don't think this series is for everyone, but if you were at all interested in sort of what I've described so far, you should definitely check it out, because if you do like it, it is absolutely worth it. I will also say for all of Tamsin Muir books, you have to finish them. If you get to any point and you're confused or you don't really know what's going on, you have to finish. You have to finish the book because everything kind of clicks at the end. Also, in my copy of Gideon, there was a definitions page in the like table like at the end, and I really wish I'd realized that earlier, because it would have been really helpful at the beginning when they're just kind of tossing words around and you don't really know what they mean yet. But so like that's my one tip if you're kind of struggling at the beginning. People seem to really love the audiobook. I tried it and it was not for me, but now that I know the tone of the books a little more, I think I probably would like it. But it's kind of weird because it's not what you really expect. But Gideon is by far one of the most unique books I've ever read, and I absolutely recommend it. Next, I read The Prettiest Star by Carter Sickles. I have a vlog coming out pretty soon where I go into a lot more in-depth thoughts about my feelings for the book, so I'll keep it pretty brief here. But basically, The Prettiest Star follows our main character, Brian, as he returns home to his Appalachian town in the 1980s after being diagnosed with AIDS, and he is a gay man. And really, the book has an unflinching look at what that means for Brian's identity, for his relationship with his family, and for the physical well-being of his body. And I think it is such an important book, and was like heartbreakingly beautiful. It's one of those books, I rated it 5 stars. I don't think I'll ever read it again, but I am very glad that I did. Next, I read The End of October by Lawrence Wright. I have a video coming out pretty soon that will go over my thoughts about this. This is going to be a recurring theme that you're seeing. I really tried to get these all out before the end of January. It didn't happen. I apologize. But The End of October is basically a pandemic thriller. That was not what I wanted to read. I didn't enjoy it. Gave it 1.5 stars. I do actually think I would like Lawrence Wright's nonfiction. It was written in a very non-fiction-y way, and it was about a pandemic. I didn't want to read it. Read it for a video. It was not good. Then I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, which I wanted to like this book so much. Had so much stuff I love. I love Romeo and Juliet retellings. I love like gang related books. I really thought I would like an Asian inspired like mythology. Turns out I do. The book I was looking for was Jade City by Fonda Lee, which I've since read and gave 5 stars. I loved it. A lot of the narrative choices that Chloe Gong made were just not what I wanted from the book. And like, that's not her fault. She wasn't writing a book specifically for me. It turns out that book already existed. But I definitely recommend it. It's very interesting and intriguing. It's very different than a lot of other stuff I've read with the mythology. I actually am really looking forward to the sequel though, because I think the sequel is going to give me a lot of those Romeo and Juliet moments that I didn't feel like I really had in the first book. There was a lot of Tybalt, and as Tybalt is my favorite Romeo and Juliet character, I did enjoy that element of it. But as for the Romeo and Juliet aspects, I think I'm going to get them all in the second book, and that's going to be like beautiful. I'm going to love it. So I ended up giving it, I think, 3.5 stars. Then I read Riot Baby by Tonya Onyebuchi, which is also for a video. You know, people in these wrap-ups always say like, oh, I'm reading this and this and this for a secret TBR. Oh, it's so obvious. Everyone's gonna guess it. I'm like, I have no idea. But then I feel like mine are so obvious. I don't know. But anyways, I ended up giving Riot Baby 4 stars. I just wish it had really leaned into the science fiction elements a lot more than it did. Really, it was kind of like 4/5 set in our modern time, and that last 5th was in the future, and I just wanted, that was what I thought I was getting in the book, and so it was just kind of like my expectations weren't met, which is not the book's fault, but what the book set out to do, I think it did really, really well, which was tell a story of sort of generational trauma and racial trauma and how that manifests in internal characters, and that was like so good. And Tonya Onyebuchi did a really, really good job with that. I also read the audiobook, and it was read by the narrator, which is not my fave way to read an audiobook. So I think I would recommend reading this physically. Then I read Rodham by Curtis Sittenfeld, which is basically a alternate history book if Hillary Rodham, had left Bill after her first year in Arkansas. And it was everything I didn't know I emotionally needed to like process the 2016 election. So you get to the end of the book, and first off, the writing is just phenomenal. Curtis Sittenfeld is a phenomenal writer. I love the way that she chose to do things, the way she chose to have us inside Hillary Clinton's head. As someone who's a Hillary Clinton stan and like listened to her podcast, like has done a lot of Hillary Clinton research, it was everything I thought about the woman. I actually really enjoyed the beginning, which was like the 1970s, her in college, the part I didn't really get to live through. And so I really enjoyed learning that side of Hillary a lot, and her relationship with Bill and how that like developed and grew and what they were both getting out of it. And so I really enjoyed all of that. And then at the end, I literally, like the last 2 pages, I was sobbing. I was just like tears streaming down my face, like sobbing. And I was like sitting out here on the couch, and my partner, he was like, "Kate, are you okay?" He like heard me crying. And I was like, "No, I'm not okay. And he like runs from the back room to the couch and is like, what's wrong? And I was like, the book is so sad. And he was pissed at me. He was so mad. He was like, I thought you would hurt yourself, or one of the cats had gotten hurt. And I was like, it's just about Hillary Clinton. Yes, so that's me. Hi, welcome to the book stamp. This is what you get. Anyways, 5 stars. If you love Hillary Clinton, read the book. It's excellent. Then I read Boys Dance, which is a basically children's book. It's like 40 pages about male dancers and men taking ballet. And it was just so cute and so like beautifully illustrated. It was adorable. I loved it. It was so cute. Then I read Network Effect by Martha Wells, which is the 5th book in the Murderbot series, which I've already talked about. And more thoughts will be coming soon in a vlog. But I really liked it. I gave it 5 stars at the time, but I think I've knocked it down to a 4. Then I read Upright Women Wanted, also coming to you soon in a vlog. But Upright Women Wanted is like one of my new all-time favorite books. It basically is taking a dystopian look at the Southwest in the near future, set in a like eternal war, and is about finding queer family and finding yourself and understanding truths about the world. And it's amazing. Everybody go read it right now. It's so good. Upright Women Wanted. It's here. Then I read Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which is the 2nd book in the Locked Tomb trilogy after Gideon the Ninth. I read them both this month and absolutely loved it. It was not at all what I was expecting after Gideon. It takes a completely different tone. It like completely changes how you see the world that Tamsin Muir has built. Made me love Harrow even more, like as a character. Like the last 100 pages or so, you're just like, it's just like the whole world clicks together in a new way. It's amazing. If you start this, you have to finish it. Like you're gonna be confused like the first 70%, but you have to finish it, because otherwise it like doesn't work. And that's not for everybody. If you were kind of on the fence about Gideon, you're probably not gonna like this. But if you loved Gideon, definitely make sure you finish this. It's so good. I loved it. Then I read The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This is a science fiction story, basically looking at it's set in a multiverse. So there's like 380 Earths or something like that. And the only way you can travel between them is if you are dead on the other world. So you both can't exist on the same world, mostly. And it really deals a lot with sort of the ideas of who people are across worlds, across different ways that their lives have come together. And it was just so interesting. And if you are kind of like, if you read a lot of YA and are trying to get into more adult science fiction, this is definitely a book to do that. While it definitely deals with adult topics and adult themes, it's written in a way that will feel very familiar, I think, for YA readers, and that I really liked. It's very, very, very accessible, even though it's about like multiverses and stuff. That was like my one flaw with it, was that I wanted it to be more hard sci-fi than it was. But that's just a me taste thing. So definitely recommend this. And then I read Homie by Danez Smith. One of the really interesting things was that actually one of the like parts had an epigraph that was a Danez Smith quote, and I read these back to back, which was kind of funny. But Homie is a poetry collection by Danez Smith, who is a Black non-binary writer, I found this to be just truly unlike pretty much any other poetry I've read. I read a lot of like white Instagram-y poetry. That's something I'm trying to break out of. But really, I just felt like I didn't have the tools necessary to rate this, so I decided not to rate it. That's something I'm going to be more willing to do this year, I think, especially in terms of like poetry and nonfiction. So be on the lookout for that. But I definitely recommend this poetry book. It deals a lot of with like grief and queerness and blackness, and it was just really beautifully written, and I really enjoyed it. And it really sort of expanded my poetry experience, and I really appreciated that from a book, and I'm looking forward to reading more of Dinez's work and just more poetry this year in general. Then I read Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon. This will also be featured in a blog along with half the other books in this wrap-up. But absolutely loved it. It is basically a multi-generational ship that is based on like pre-Civil War American social structures. And I love a good generational ship, and this is probably the best generational ship media I've ever read. It was so good. I loved it so much. River Solomon is now one of my like auto-buy authors. I want to read everything they've written. They're coming out with a new book this year. I'm so excited. Cannot wait. And then finally this year, goodness gracious. Finally, the last book I read in January was The Black Tides of Heaven, which is a science fiction fantasy story about a world where magic is called the slack and only certain people are able to use it, and people basically choose their own gender when they feel like they have determined their own gender, and then like go through the process of choosing it. And there's also sort of a totalitarian government type thing going on. My main complaint though is that this could have been a 500-page fantasy novel and instead was a 200-page novella, and so I don't feel like I really grasped everything like thoroughly, and I just wish it had really been longer. That's my main problem with it. So I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, just because I wanted so much more out of it, and I thought all of the themes and things were so interesting, and I just didn't feel like they were fully explored in the book. But I still really enjoyed it, and definitely for trying to like read different and diverse fantasy, this is something I definitely recommend you to read. And then finally some stats for the month. So this month I read 7 audiobooks, 3 ebooks, and 9 books physically, so pretty good spread. I ended up reading 19 books for 5,248 pages. I listened for 44 hours of audiobooks. My average rating was a 4.06, so it was a very good reading month. I enjoyed pretty much every book I read except for like a couple of outliers. Average pages was 276, which is a little low for me, but I read like 10 novellas this month. An insane number of novellas, but I really enjoyed them, so. And Own Voices, 10 out of the 19 books I read were Own Voices books. So I think that's pretty good. But yeah, so those are my statistics for the month as well. So thanks for hanging out for my January wrap up. Hope you enjoyed it, and see y'all soon.